So I want to talk about bacteria and language. I'm going to kind of skip the stuff in between because it's all like blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, and I'm really inspired by this descent of man. And notice that he said descent, not ascent of man. And we'll see why I think that's appropriate. But also I want you to make, this is kind of low, sorry. I want to just emphasize that selection can only act on what you do, not what you think. Now, thinking may be an absolutely essential component of what you do in the world. In fact, that's, again, I'm going to very much emphasize that, but it's what you do in the world that actually selection acts on. And I think we sometimes forget that. Like these people like me forget that. Okay, so I want to talk about language. And this is a fairly narrow view, which is communication for decision and control between and within agents, really thinking about what you do is what matters, okay? That doesn't mean thinking doesn't matter, right? Thinking is an essential intermediate. Okay? It's just we want to put that in the right perspective. So I'm going to think of language as a function of comms for control between and within agents. It's communications for the purpose of control between and within agents, okay? And then there's constraints on the available hardware. And the constraints of available hardware in humans is very severe. Our machines may be less so. And then another function is to learn to do this, right? And one of the themes is the architecture of language has evolved much faster than the brains who are using it. And it's evolved to be learnable by children and apparently large language models. Okay, so this is the architecture that I'm going to try to talk about for language. Stages, levels, and layers are all the essential things. Again, you've been hearing about this for 10 years. Okay, but this is one of the most elegant architectures I've seen of this type. And I did not want to work on this, but I eventually did. Well, I'll say a little bit more about that. So I want to tell you a little bit about this architecture, and then what's good about it, what can go wrong. Okay. And so I'm going to initially focus on text and slides. This is not, obviously, maybe this isn't most interesting, but the kind of text you see in a slide or, in written documents or on websites and stuff like that. Later, we'll get into verbal language and how all this evolved. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. So here's the idea: is that stages flow. Okay, and so then what's interesting is that's a phrase and it has semantic syntax and text, and you could elaborate on that a lot more. This is absolutely a minimal number of levels, minimum number of layers, and so on. Okay, so and then you zoom in on a level below and you get words. And notice that those also have all the same layers. This is very unusual. Usually when you zoom in, you get layers, but they're not the same as the ones you zoomed from. Okay? So this is a very tight architecture. None of this, which I appreciate, I'll get to why, I had no clue. But anyway, this is all new for me. And then letters don't really have a syntax role, but they can. They can have, so like apostrophe S and stuff can have. But, and also, symbols and stuff can. But then they certainly are text.
So, letters have, in words, have context.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is oversimplified. Got it.
Syntax, but it's not the same as the word.
That's why I wanted to put a dash there, right? Okay. So, and I'm going to be brazenly superficial about language here. Sorry. Okay. And then it scales amazingly. So it's very scalable and it's also very effective. And we want to talk more about what I mean by effective. And this is not like crazy even within the linguistics community. Well, it is, but Ray Jackendorf proposed this long ago. Now he would probably go, "Oh, this is not what I said," right? So I'm taking it all like my hammer and pounding this nail. Okay, so he's seen me do this and he doesn't like it. So anyway, but it's very scalable. super scalable, right? So this is almost unique among architectures. And we'll see some alternatives. Okay, so anyway, so this is what I call universal layer architectures, or EULA, okay? Stages flow, levels zoom, layers stack. And that is how everything since bacteria work, okay? So we're going to go back and look at bacteria just to check this, right? Okay. But bacterial language actually are the most elegant and evolvable. You know, bacteria evolved into everything. Obviously, not all that worked out. Absolutely pervasive, okay? So there's, I don't know, 10 to the 32 bacteria. And then language is like everywhere, okay?
There are even more bacteriophages.
I'll talk about that. Yeah, you've heard, I mean, Terry's heard this talk a million times, so he can
Sorry.
anticipate every slide, okay? And you should, well, it'd be better if you commented on the slides like, oh, that was not how, anyway, okay. So they're also extremely hijackable, which the phage we'll get to, and then we'll talk about phage and patriarchy. Phage are basic viruses, so yeah.
In an evolutionary sense?
What?
In an evolutionary sense?
Hijackable.
We'll get to that. I have to tell you a little bit more about what all this stuff means. So yeah, okay, so let's go backwards in time and think about how language arose. And so here's the idea: is what language is for and by control. Okay, not my idea. We'll get to that. But the main thing is, it's hard to get the right picture, and so this isn't quite what I wanted, but it's not bad. Okay, so language is for by control. It's for teamwork of this type. Okay. And so language is most essentially used for control of action in teams. That's how it started. And language is most essentially made, that is, how is it produced, by sensory motor control systems. I'm not one of these people who believes that there was some magic gene 100,000 years ago or anything like that, okay? Again, selection, okay, so language is both for control and it's implemented by control. So this is what we call for by control, okay? Not my idea. So thinking, memory, computing, decision are all essential intermediate stages in a control implementation, okay? And that's sort of the by control means all of these things. But if you look at how they're organized within our brain, and Terry briefly describes some work we'd recently done that really nails this down, it's implemented as control systems. And so, so that's what I want to kind of go back and look at some of the evolution of this. Okay, so the short-term evolution is language is for by control. You want to learn control, it's for coordinated control, and it's by sensory motor control. That's the for by. Okay. So there's a bunch of other things that were important elements that enable the evolution of language. So language by itself, but you also have a bunch of other FBCs, for by control. And so I want to explain these to you. Okay. So there's language, of course. Then there's hafted weapons. And what a hafted weapon, well, it's just what you see. It's where you have usually a wooden handle or spear, and on the end of it you put a stone element, piercing element, and it could be an axe, it could be a spear. Here, these are spears. Okay. So hafted weapons were important. Fire was important. Okay. And all of that, FBC is also for by Carmen. So this is the point I want to point out. This is all due to Carmen. I would have never worked on this. In fact, so she got like the Clauser Prize for the best thesis at Caltech for pure control theory. And then she immediately got like the biggest prize you can get for control theory in a journal, right? So, she's set. right? I mean, she's the arguably best of her generation. Her main competition is Lisa. Okay. And then she goes,
collaborated, didn't they?
what?
They collaborated.
And they collaborated. Oh, they're a dream team. Okay. So, and oh, by the way, of the eight papers that were in her thesis, I was a co-author on one of them. Okay. So very independent as well. Okay. So anyway, she comes and says, oh, I want to work on language. I'm going, no, don't do that. And I said, linguistics is just and she wanted to work on human language. I'm going, it's just a snake pit, right? And it's just awful. And everything about it is bullies and it's nastiness. And it's just, you don't want to go there. And she goes, I think it was like control theory in the 70s. I mean, you don't want to go. She goes, what did you do about that? I go, oh yeah, that's a good point. Okay, well, anyway, so now all she's working on is LLMs. And so I'm left doing humans, which is a blast. Okay, so and also the literature on all this has gotten so good recently. So once everybody, dropped Chomsky, it just flourished. Okay. Or like
Max Planck once said that science advances
Yeah.
one funeral at a time.
Yeah. Well, he's still alive, but so I think he could maybe say this thing about, what Kalman and control theory or something. Anyway, so we're working backwards in time. We're very sloppy about dates here, right? I'm not going to try to nail this down. I'm talking about somewhere between 1 million years ago and 10,000 years ago. And it's, think about 100,000 years ago. Okay. But I'm not trying to nail this down. Okay. You can refine that endlessly. We're going to defer that because I want to connect with bacteria, and that's 4 billion years. Okay. So on that time scale, whether it's 10,000 years ago or 100,000 or 1 million years ago, it doesn't matter. Right. Okay. So, and so now the thing is humans are really small, slow, and weak relative to both our predators and our prey. Okay. And it turns out this was shocking to me when I got into it. And we could talk about this. Chimps even beat us at simple games. So you try to make up these simple games. There's a whole bunch of simple games that that humans can learn quickly. And you would think, oh gosh, we got to be able to play this better. Now, certainly our machines are going to crush us at these games. I mean, they crush us at chess, and this is a lot simpler than chess. But chimps beat us. So if you're interested in that, I can tell you lots more about it. I just learned this, and it's amazing. Anyway, so, okay. But these 3 FVCs led to world domination. And so, in some sense, once this happened, the rest is history, right? And this has had mixed results at best, and we'll talk about that. So for control of teams, for remote killing, for cooking and safety, and then you have to make weapons, you have to process language, you have to make fire. Okay, so that's the FBC of all these things. And again, it really means for bicarbon. But so what do you need for control? You need dexterous sensors and actuators. But by control, need general purpose sensory motor nervous systems. Okay, so those are the things you need. Okay, so is there an hourglass here? So there's got to be an hourglass coming, right? If you've seen me talk before. And layers stack, and this is how layers stack, and I want to talk about this a little bit, which is, and they nest like this. So there's diverse applications like running on my cell phone, on my computer, on our brains. And then there's diverse media down at the bottom. And then there's something in the middle that actually also reflects this as well. Okay, so we're familiar with that here. So let me just go through, all of our computing infrastructure has this architecture. So we can talk about, we'll go back and get the cells at the bottom. We can do the brain all this way. I'm not going to do this so much of that. And then sort of this picture, sorry, I got to look up here, the 6-rec computing. Okay. So any of our, let's just take our cell phones or our laptops or whatever. Huge diversity of applications, and those apps run on a huge diversity of hardware. So if any of us has a new app, we can share it with everybody, even though we all have very different hardware. Okay, so how does that work? Well, of course, you could ask, well, what apps run on what hardware? Well, everything, right? So the whole point of all this stuff is that you can run any app on any hardware, more or less, okay? But that's not a good architecture to do that on. Okay, so this would be horrible, but that's not how it works, of course. So what happens is we have this universal thing in the middle, and what is that? Well, of course, it's the operating system. And I'm going through this because you know this. And I'm just going to give you an example of this. Okay, so you get incredibly diverse code, incredibly diverse data and hardware, and you have this uniform, universal thing in the middle. Now, notice this is an hourglass, not in complexity, but in diversity. Okay, so let me just go through that a little bit. Okay, so this doesn't mean that the OSs are not complex. So here's sort of Linux kernel. This is old, but more or less everything we're using is running some version of this, okay, roughly. Okay, so, and it's layers and levels all the way down. So I'm going to only take a little bit of this, okay? So the idea is that all that gets jammed into this little thin waist. And what's important about it is not that it's simple, but that it's universal, okay? That we all share the same thing. And then we can swap everything, okay? So what does that do for language? So language is roughly, you say the OS is semantic syntax hardware. We could argue about the details of this, but there's something in there that's an OS-like thing, okay? And what did we do with that? We hunt, gather, learn, and team, okay? So those are the things that initially we use language for. And we did speaking, sign, and drawing. We didn't initially have text. Hard to imagine what did we do before we had texting, okay? I remember what that was like, fondly, actually, okay. But then you can have war. So here's kind of the first hijacking of this architecture, right? Okay, so, and then you can have all this shit, right? And you couldn't do any of this if you didn't have language. Certainly not on the scale that we've done.
John, you added, go back, you added another word on the bottom right.
Oh yeah, that helps a lot.
No, I mean, that it doesn't just help a lot, it allows you to
Yeah,
transfer information across generation.
Yeah.
Without having to remember.
Also spread it around an empire without having to talk to everybody. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll make a big fuss over that right. That's why the right is in there. It was on there for italics. I hope they got that, but okay, thanks for emphasizing that. And there's all this other stuff we build on top of it, right? Really fun stuff. So how's all this going, right? Okay, well, not good. I mean, this is, fear, anger, hatred, violence, and now has become, I mean, just watch the news. Anyway, okay. So the bottom part of this is malware.
They cannot see the slides.
What?
In Zoom, the slides are not shown. They're taking share.
We're saying your screen Zoom right now.
They're not showing this.
I did.
Yes.
It's on my, I mean, look, it's shared.
Well, share. Be generous about your share.
I mean, I don't know what I can do, but okay.
Can it, Yorgo, can you please?
Oh, it's fine, it's fine.
We see them.
Is this from Zoom?
I see, no, other people, so is the.
I don't want to
one
start.
person will come.
No,
It's only one person.
going.
It's only one person.
I think you're saying it. I think you're doing it correct.
Not, oh,
Don't change
no, don't change.
It's fine.
It's just one person.
I mean,
It's sharing.
okay.
Okay.
Okay. So hijacking at the bottom end of this stuff we call malware. Okay. We're all familiar with malware. We don't like malware. Okay. I don't know what to call this upper thing. So I'm just, it has to be Latin or Greek or something, right? Okay. So I just made, I had another thing here, but I went and rethought this last night, and here's my new thing, Malcreasy. Now I'm making it awkward because I don't want to stick with that. I want someone else to figure out the right word for this. But it's bad use. Okay. So what idea is that all this stuff is bad use of language. Okay, so, and then the worst use is patriarchy, and that's the theme that's coming up. But patriarchy is to society like cancer is to the body. Okay, it's hijacking things that are otherwise essential, like wound healing. So cancer is hijacking wound healing, and we can talk endlessly about that. It was a controversial idea. Like, I think but it's been 100 years now people have been talking about it. I think we've really nailed down that that's what's going on. Okay, so I don't like this name. Okay, so I'm just making up an awkward, awful name. So, but is malware great? I don't know. Anyway, so, okay. So basically everything is hijacked by Malcreasy and patriarchy. Some worse than others. So I would say there's this order. So math is not very hijacked because nobody cares. Okay? So the stakes are so low that we can actually, within math, you can actually be rigorous. It's amazing. And then you go outside that, like the physics, and it's, oh my God, it's like, oh, so, and science is not as good as math and that gap is enormous. And
Well, science is different from math. I wouldn't say it's better or worse.
with respect to these issues, it's much worse. We can argue over that, but okay. And then sort of our news, okay, that's worse than science. And society is worse than news in terms of Malcresi, whatever, okay, and patriarchy. And software is more hijackable than hardware. Okay. So it's actually hard for anybody to really take over your hardware. What they do is they take over your operating system or something like that. Okay, so
I'm skeptical about the universality of all of this, because language is stacks because it's recursive, but all these other things do not feel recursive.
they are.
They stack. No,
Oh no, these are all apps that run on top of the stack.
these are all apps that run on top of. Yeah.
Okay, it's like these are apps like your cell phone.
Yeah. So
So these are apps. So now you could say, well, the apps are
yeah, they compile down, they go onto hardware. So
Yeah.
I agree that there is a stack.
There's a stack.
Not indefinitely the way the language is.
It's not what?
It can't indefinitely stack the way the language can.
It seems like it has been.
But
Technology over time has been increasingly, stacks on top of stacks on top of stacks. And that's a good
we
one.
can argue.
No. So the point is, for me,
Yeah.
language is the extreme of evolvability. And so language is the best at doing all these things. And it's easy to hijack.
But John,
Yeah.
I think that's.
But so are bacteria.
The thing that, just a quick comment, the thing that is really a little bit doesn't make sense to me is that, and I'll quote from a little book called Mind from Matter by a gentleman, Max Delbruck, who is somehow related to the topic in this room. In chapter 9 of his little book, who kind of rephrasing quotes the following: language has a dual role. One is a very private role, which is knowledge representation, and one which is public.
Yeah, I buy all that.
To communication
Yeah.
between each other. How does this fit?
I buy all that.
Hmm?
I'll do in the half hour left, I'll do as much as I can to tell you how the details actually work. But
Okay, knowledge and communication.
yeah, so this would be normally 3 years at Caltech. So, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay, I'm not gonna talk about mental illness. I think this all contributes to mental illness, but we're not gonna talk about that. Okay, because it's really this allostasis, homeostasis story. Anyway, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, what do we want to do with all this? Well, we'd like language to have all these features. We'd like to be useful, true, meaningful, syntactic, surprising is important, and timely. Okay, and I'm highlighting useful and timely for a reason. So because this is the picture that Shannon and Weaver painted in 1949, essentially. This is how they describe communication. And I'm elaborating a little bit, but the most important thing was what matters was how effective it was in the world. And that was in 1949, okay? And I just have to say, Shannon's like a huge hero of mine because he was my dad's best friend in elementary school. So I grew up hearing about Shannon this, Shannon that, Shannon this, like that. And I never met him, but when I was at MIT, he was still an MIT professor, but he never came to campus, which I've tried to emulate in my own career. And so I got to talk to him on the phone, and he was such a sweetheart, but he didn't come to campus. And the really stupidest thing wow, that's hard to say because I've done so many stupid things. But one of the stupid things was I never really followed up. I just talked to him on the phone. I never followed up. And I did my master's thesis on information theory. So anyway, I think you would have liked my master's. Anyway, and I had the shortest master's thesis in the history of MIT. It's 20 pages. And from my bachelor's degree came the shortest abstract in IEEE history. There are none. So and the whole idea is that you want the tip of the spear to be really sharp, right? Anyway, so this is how they describe communication, okay? But then their first cut was called information theory, and that was just surprise. Now they call it information. I was very unfortunate, and they used information and entropy and a whole bunch of very unfortunate choices of words. Now everybody calls it surprisal that thinks about it. Okay. So that was all. So then they came up with source channel. So they found a further layering within the technical part, which was source channel. Genius. Okay. Absolute genius. Okay. But they never returned to this bigger picture, and neither did anyone in information theory. So we need a theory of this now, and we don't have it. And Chomsky did not deliver. And so, and now what's happening is people are dropping Chomsky and adopting Shannon. But adopt this Shannon, not the little Shannon, the big Shannon. Okay. So information theory is very, very small part of information technology. So information is now used almost as an antonym to itself. And again, I'm going to claim it's much less than communications for control. And so this is what they did. And this theoretically was amazing, okay? But it's such a tiny, tiny little bit of their overall vision that they even stopped working on it. What I wanted to ask Shannon was like, why did you stop working on this? And he even wrote, about, don't think this is the end of the story. I mean, he wrote this paper in 1956 and it says, hey, information theory, you think it has to do with all these applications, stuff like it doesn't. His bigger picture did, but information theory per se, source and channel coding, has almost nothing to do with most of what we do. It's hardly used in the internet except the periphery, right? The core internet architecture, TCP/IP, is control. It's not information theory. Okay. So we want to go back to this. Let's go try and figure this out.
Which kind of generalizes to with side channel. I mean, adding a side channel to a regular channel, you get basically control. I mean, you get the feedback and.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. So this is gonna. So what I'm gonna want to shift to is information tech, language for and by control, communications for control, and now not Shannon, not Chomsky, but Bode, Nyquist, and Turing in robustness and network. So this is decades of work, but we want to now think of it in the context. Let's go back and rethink language from this perspective. So basically, this is reviving Shannon and Weaver. So here's the idea: is that these are the language layers. I'm going to write them in a line instead of a stack. Okay. So humans, what do we do with language? We reduce computation and delay at the cost of memory usage. Okay. What does Shannon do with source channel for machines? It increases computation and delay to compress space. These are opposite from each other. They're not just different, but they're opposites. Okay. Then Turing is about what's the compute time scalability for large problems, and he ignores space entirely. So these are fragmented pictures. Okay, but we want to think about what humans do. Okay, so the idea is this: what the red stuff is what children in machine learn from examples. Okay, we don't send our LLMs to elementary school to learn grammar, right? Okay, but the middle layers are enabling. So you have to have those middle layers. But what's astonishing about the architecture is you can learn those middle layers implicitly from examples.
What are those middle layers? What's your examples of that?
Syntax. You know what syntax is? Oh, sorry. Let's take that offline. Does everybody else know what syntax is? Okay.
It's the order of the words and how that's related to meaning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, not exactly. Okay. Anyway, surprising just means it's new to me. Okay. True just means it's true, right? Okay. So all these things matter. Let's just think surprising and true as important elements of language, but you have to learn those. You're not going to kind of get those just from, okay. So I'm claiming that blue is a hypothetical proposed operating system for language. And then you can imagine what you build on. So math is an example of layers on top of this. You add logic, and then you add all sorts of things, and you get all these apps like, differential topology and non-self-adjoint operator theory, which was my thesis was on. Okay, so math is a good example of an app that runs on this architecture. But what I'm saying is universal about this is these three things. And everything since bacteria. So I want to go, I want to go back to bacteria a little bit if I can. But again, the thing about language, which blew me away when I started understanding it, was how elegant, evolvable, pervasive, and hijackable it is. Not all those are good things. Okay. So let's go back. So we have this paper from last year. I wouldn't recommend trying. This is aimed at control theorists. Okay. But there's case studies in here that are very accessible, I think, and one of them is bacteria. Okay. And so this started for me long ago. So I got interested in the architecture of biology back in around 2000. Okay. And so this was a cover article of Science that was, so this looks like a DNA. Oh, sorry. This looks like a DNA double helix, but it's actually made out of Legos. And so our idea was biology is basically like Legos in terms of architecture, which is kind of outrageous. And then this is another one on, oh, I have to get my, sorry. Let me get my annotation here because I restarted it. Sorry about that. Okay. So this paper is about bow ties, metabolism, but this bow ties will come up again. So, okay. So I'm gonna go through this quickly because I'm around all week and I'm happy to talk about this. So, okay. So the idea is that what's universal about this is if you want robustness and you want to be efficient, adaptable, evolvable, scalable, if you want all those features in a system you build, then you must have these. You can't do it otherwise. Okay. Now you should think that sounds crazy, right? So most people who aren't in the Caltech bubble don't believe this. Okay. And the idea is that it's necessary. Okay. So, and that's where the math comes in to prove this. Okay. So you have to actually set this up in the math and prove it. Okay. But I'm not going to talk about that. So what does EULA stand for? It's universal and it's layers, levels, and laws. Okay. I left out stages because it's not spelled with an L. Anyway, so, so there's case studies we've done. I'm going to go through this really fast because hopefully you've seen this before. But we really care about language and bacteria. That's significant. We have these really nice, easy case studies. Like clothing is a great example of all of this. Legos is a great example. Everything around us is a great example of it. Okay. But what was a sweet spot between actually caring about it and having the math be trivial, like high school, was a sensory motor control problem. So I'm not going to. That's this paper with Terry. And I'm only going to. So this is all the reason this was important because it was the first paper that I was able to do that was actually meaningful. Like you learned something from it. You could do experiments. The experiments fit the data. I mean, all this kind of. I mean, the theory fit the data, and it was all high school. Now it's a little bit cheating because we didn't do it with high school first. We did it with, we took the biggest hammer we had lately, which is all graduate math and stuff like that. We solved the problem and then worked back to see if we could figure out a way to do it the same way without the math. And that's what Yori really was responsible for how to, cleanse it from all the math. Okay. So it's this game, right? You have a trail and you got to do this. If you haven't seen this before, I apologize. I'm going to go through this too fast. But the idea is that, and then you got the bumps, and these are two layers that are done with basically independent part of your brain. Okay. So the idea is that you have a trail layer and a bumps layer. And I'm only telling you, this paper is so easy to read, and I've got a million videos online on it. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about why this. So this was distilling the essence of layers. So we want to just have two layers. Of course, in some sense, the action is going on subcortical anyway. So we can't do that. So we have a game. So you can still play the game here. Okay. So talk to Toby. Toby has the game set up. Okay. The nice thing about that is now you can do the trail of the bumps independently or together, and you can crash. You can push the players to crash, and nobody dies. So this is what is this system for? It's for control, okay? But then it's implemented in nerves, and this is levels. So we have the layers and the levels, okay? And this is Terry world, right? And this is, I don't know, this is from the 1890s.
18,
What?
1890.
1890s.
No,
I must be confused. I must have a digit wrong.
80s, not.
It's 1980s, not 1890s. Okay, I got it. Okay. I was thinking, you know, something.
Great.
So this is Terry's story, and this is, the top is sort of the top, and this, and you know, and so these are levels, okay? Okay, so, and how do we get these nerves? Well, we had to make a model of these nerves, and the team of Laughlin and Sterling were crucial to this. Sterling's another great hero of mine. What? Okay. And so again, you probably heard about this before. The idea is that you have this really striking trade-off just within the cranial nerves. Okay. And so what you have is you have olfaction, which has a lot of little axons, some big axons, and something in between. Okay. So there's this trade-off, right? You can be fast or you can be accurate, but you can't be both. And you'd like to just be in the lower left-hand corner, but that doesn't scale. That's too expensive. Okay. But what it does is it creates this picture, right? So now all I have to do is connect the two pictures, and that's the math, and it's all high school. So that's the theory. And so this part is for control, but it's implemented as a control system. Okay, so it's for and by control. The simplest example of that I know of, okay, because it's all high school. So this is the FBC, for by control. Okay, so but now I care about this FBC, okay? This is another paper, I just want to mention it. Terry mentioned this before. This is Lisa led this paper. The big idea here was due to a niche. She said, why is there all this feedback within visual cortex, right? There's 10 times as many wires going from motor back out to the retina as there are coming up. Why is it all that way? Well, there's all sorts of explanations for this and everything, and they were all wrong. And so we said, okay, this is right. And we got really lucky because no one was going to believe this. I mean, like all of my my neuro colleagues are going like, they didn't say this to me, but their students would tell me, like, what happened to Terry used to be this really good guy. And have you heard of lately? I mean, he talks about delays in the brain. Like, who gives a shit? And feedback, all that feedback, like, anyway, their students had a quite different reaction, fortunately. Okay, so that's kind of what matters. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about this either, but this is a really good paper. And Lisa just hit this out of the park. I mean, so it was kind of a niche's idea to look at the problem, but Lisa really, I think Lisa did the heavy lifting on this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about bacteria. So they have a control hourglass and a metabolic bow tie. Diverse code, diverse metabolites. Okay, lots of diversity. And so this is why you want all these features. It has all these features. Okay. And the claim is it's necessary. If you're going to have all these features, you've got to use this architecture. So all stuff about biology being all about contingency and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. But it has a lot of necessity in it. And this, you should see the reviews I get in biology from this, because they say there is no necessity in biology. Anyway, I say there's tons. So there's a bow tie down here. What does that mean? Okay. It means you have, there's a, again, not complexity, but diversity bow tie. Okay. And so there's a knot, because you have catabolism, that's very diverse. Bacteria can eat anything that has a positive redox status. I mean, it's crazy what bacteria can eat. Okay. And then you have go through glycolysis, which is this little thin knot. And then you make a diverse number of things. Think all the proteins that your body makes. I mean, there's tens of thousands, and there's billions of proteins across the planet.
What is anabolism and cognitive? Can you just?
No, I can't explain it. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's another course. Sorry. I'll say quickly this is catabolism is breaking down and anabolism is building up.
I see.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't so hard. This is about diversity, not complexity. Okay. And so this is uniform and universal And I'll say exactly what I mean by that. The idea is if you didn't have this, there would be this all-to-all mess, okay? This would not scale. This would not work, okay? And that's not how it's done. It's done like this. And this is provably optimal if you just use constrained optimization and duality and stuff. So it's not like you can prove that this is optimal under plausible constraints about how biology has to work, okay? So there's huge diversity between cells. There's huge diversity of cells within organisms. There's no diversity in the knot. Everything on the planet runs this same architecture, okay? For billions of years. Okay, so, and you can prove the optimality. It's heavily used in all sorts. So the fact that this is used all over in bioengineering and stuff. And so there actually is, you want to build some new process and you take bacteria and you optimize the hell out of them and then you knock in genes and stuff. So there's a whole technology built around this, okay? Flux balance analysis, if you've heard of that, we upgraded that with flux exponent control. I don't know if you heard of systems biology markup language. You need systems biology markup language because you have all this architecture. You don't want to just do bottom-up simulations, okay? Okay, so it has all these features. Let's look at the control hourglass, okay? You have diverse genes, you have sort of diverse genes, you have incredibly diverse enzymes across the planet. This is exactly the same in every cell on the planet, transcription and translation. So the protocol, it's like TCP/IP. Everybody has to run it. You don't have a choice, right? This is like that. Diverse genes, diverse enzymes, okay? And it's not like that. That would be a mess, okay? So this hourglass is necessary. And again, you have people who just insist that there is no necessity in biology, right? The fact that this is run in every cell on the planet, it's just an accident, right? So what this means is that genes are swappable and metabolites are swappable because they're all the same. Are all running the same architecture. This accelerates evolution incredibly. That's why antibiotic resistance is such a threat, because any bacteria gets an antibiotic resistant gene, everybody's got it eventually. Okay. So these are not swappable. And these are not swappable. So it's a control hourglass and a metabolic bow tie. And they're uniform, and both of these are the same protocol, every cell on the planet. And I call it the constraints that deconstrain by Gerhardt and Kirschner. This is the essence of architecture. There are constraints you are just given by the world, like you have to function a certain way and here are the parts. But everything in between is constraints that deconstrain. That is, you choose constraints deliberately that ultimately deconstrain what's possible. So if there was a pithy phrase for what architecture is, that's what it is. That's what architecture is. So what can go wrong? A lot. Okay, you got swappable code, right? So what did phage swap their ways in, right? So if bacteria can swap, so can phage. Phage are viruses for bacteria, okay? They have their own architecture and trade-offs, and presumably they originally evolved because they greatly accelerate horizontal gene transfer and evolution. So there was originally this bacterial internet and the packets were phage, okay? And then they went rogue and they evolved to be killer pathogens. Depending on who you ask, they kill 20 to 50% of ocean bacteria every day. So you might think bacteria are the top organism on the planet, but actually phage are. And who decides on 50%? It's the phage, right? Because they can't kill all the hosts. 20 to 50% is about optimal for the growth of the phage. And this hijacking is a universal fragility of these architectures. So what's happening here is what's happening to our society. It's what's happening to our networks and so on. Okay. And then parasites and predators, because of the universal metabolites, everybody can be it's easy to parasitize and it's easy to predate because you have these universal metabolites. And we have this, and I'm claiming this is just the same thing. It's just the same kind of this is viruses and bacteria and cancer, but now of society. Okay. Okay, so this is the internet. I'm going to skip this. I'm running out of time. This is diversity bow tie and language, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Oh, so Yeah, I won't do on this. So the point is, this is a picture you usually see of metabolism here on the right, okay? But it doesn't have the feedback loops in. Why? Because it would go black with lines, okay? So there's massive feedback everywhere there. That's true of our brains, that's true of everything. And if you don't have a theory about that, you're going to be bewildered forever. And the point is, you have to do this. So this idea on the left is a counterfactual and impossible. On the right, it's necessary. All that complexity is necessary. We can see exactly why it's there. Here's a paper that gives a clue to that. It's a little old now. Okay, but okay, so cancer is all about hijacking wound healing. We're going to skip that. This is the immune system written out this way. So this is a layered architecture of the immune system. You get this diversity-enabled sweet spot because all these do their job in the right way. If they get hijacked, I happen to have an autoimmune disease, so I know what goes wrong. When it goes wrong really bad. Okay, so okay, let me see what I want to say at the end of here. Okay, so what can go wrong? So you've been writing, and you get all this crap, right? I mean, tombs of dead. You have all these workers doing tombs of dead pharaohs. By the way, they actually weren't slaves; they were wage labor. So. But then you can have these huge, once you can build empires, and you need writing to build empires, I think Terry points out. Now you can have these huge wars, like between empires, okay? And then the printing press, great idea, right? It led to extreme horrors afterwards, because now you could have Catholics and Protestants fighting over like nuances of doctrine that the people fighting had no idea what they were fighting over. They really, these guys had, these people who were fighting, they didn't know what the nuances of doctrine they were fighting over. They just knew that the other guys were evil and had to kill them, right? Okay, so tools become weapons. Then the radio, great thing, right? Radio. This guy used it to great effectiveness if you just want to be as evil as possible. Okay. Now everything's hijacked, right? We have organized warfare, we have infanticide, we have inequality. It's just like everything's hijacked, and you think, okay, so I'm going to end up with, is there any alternative?
We keep the internet.
So basically, all this got hijacked too, right? So we've been hijacking for at least 100,000 years like this, okay? So we're small, but so we have this, okay, so is it possible to not, is there anywhere we don't have patriarchy? And it turns out, you've heard me say this before, but these EBOs are, elephants, bonobos, and orcas, okay? So what don't they do? No organized warfare, no murder, no infanticide, really no inequality, no fear, anger, a lot of violence. So the lower right-hand corner, that's the biggest, baddest thing in the ocean, okay? They snack on great whites. So it's not like they're not violent. It's just that they basically direct their violence downward and not sideways. Okay. And they don't have that's what they eat. They don't have a choice, right? They're not going to become vegans, right? But otherwise, they don't do any of this other shit, okay? Well, who does? We do, right? We do all of it. So do chimps. So we're basically chimps with like nukes, okay? Because the chimps do all of those things, right? We do all those things. Chimps do all those things. So it's all very badly hijacked. But there is an alternative. And so one of my talks that I'm not giving now is these organisms are completely different. They are as far apart on the mammalian tree as you can get. But they all run the same architecture. And it's very different than ours and chimps. And so, this is probably the only thing that really matters in this talk, in some sense. If we don't fix this, nothing else matters. And language and technology are essential for this. But these groups use language and technology and stuff, not as much as we do, not as sophisticated as we do. But they have what appear to be almost ideal. And since you've last heard me talk, there's been a whole bunch of really interesting things happen within the communities that study this. So
John, aren't bonobos chimps?
they're the same species.
But are their
But-
brains different?
What?
What's different about them from chimps?
Their societies.
So it's not their brains that are different.
No.
It's the culture.
I mean, they can interbreed and they probably split maybe I think 1 million years ago. Long after we split, but they can interbreed.
But do you think that society is passed on through experience, or do you think it's genetically encoded? Like if you raise a bonobo in a chimp society, you know, if you.
All very good
How
questions.
much is
Okay, so I have,
coding and how much is? Yeah, nobody,
so I have strong opinions about this and
but evidence?
baboons.
Yeah.
So there's one baboon troop that switched. And the baboons are like nastier than the chimps, okay? And there was a baboon troop studied by Sapolsky, who is a hero of mine. We don't exactly agree on free will, but I think we agree, it's just the technical details. So what he observed was a baboon troop that is nasty. I mean, they are so much worse. I mean, they are like, you know, well, they're not they don't have organized warfare because they're so busy fighting each other, they can't organize warfare, right? But they are nasty, nasty, nasty. And a whole baboon troop switched to bonobo-like. A whole troop. And they persisted even after the individuals had turned over. So it's about architecture. It's not about genes. It's not about.
Yeah, but it's also about evolutionary fitness, right? Because the ones that act in a certain way.
Yeah, there's no simple thing I can tell you in less than like 3 years at Caltech. Okay. But there is a story here and it's understandable. And I don't see how to get it. I don't see how to do it in humans in a scalable way. So the challenge would be, can we stop being chimps and be bonobos?
But there
Okay.
are examples of matriarchal societies in humans over the years, not many.
Not many.
So that's an existence proof that it is possible in humans.
Yeah, and also let me just be clear, it's not, we don't have the right word for it because it's not matriarchy. There are matriarchies like the meerkats. Meerkats are very much a matriarchy. The females rule. And they're the most murderous animals on the planet. So matriarchy per se, and we need another word. I like matriluna, which is love from the mother. So society that's organized, if society's fundamental organizing principle is mother love, I'm starting a whole nother lecture, sorry. And if you scale that up, and what does that mean? Who's in charge? The mother. Who benefits from the mother's activity? The baby. The mother will at times die for the baby, okay? How do patriarchies work? The owner is in charge and the owner gets all the goods. So you just have to flip that. You just say, I'm in charge, but I'm going to do it for the benefit. That's not matriarchy. That's some other name. Again, I have all these things I don't know names for, so I find some Greek thing and say matriluna. Like anybody's going to adopt that. But matriarchy would be rule the mother, and we have those. We know what those look like. They're not nice. So, and they're rare. They're quite rare. So anyway, so this is a huge challenge. Or I guess this is the big challenge. That's the big challenge. Okay. And we only have baboons as a really crystal example of how this could change. And I don't see how, there's no way to well, there is, but it's horrible. So we can't do what happened to the baboon. So these are the challenges. Now, all I'm saying here is that if you don't think about language, you don't think about this stuff in an architectural way, it'll always be bewildering. You'll never anticipate how things get hijacked. Like burning fossil fuels, what could go wrong? You know, give every adolescent on the planet a cell phone. What could go wrong, right? I mean, we got to be better at that. Oh, we're going to put AI everywhere. What could go wrong? And again, I'm not worried about AI taking over. I'm worried about AI as a weapon for those who already have taken over. So, and who you really want to talk to probably is Carmen, because she's thought a lot about this in more deep way. So I'm doing a imitation of Carmen. But you could say, oh, all she did is apply all this to language. So you could, either way you want to look at it. So I take some credit, but anyway, so there's obviously last weekend, and I'm here till, well, we're leaving on, I guess, Friday. Terry and I are leaving on Friday. So
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon.
Alright.
As you might guess, I love talking about this. I will go on rants for, until you are like, God, get this guy. Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta go. I have to go to the bathroom. Like I'm doing it now. So anyway, any other burning questions?
Well, first, let's see.
Terry puts up with us all the time, so.
Okay, so, anyone have a burning question? I never know,
How about a
what is a
smoldering
burning question? Because obviously you don't want to burn something down.
No, a smoldering
Okay,
question.
smoldering question.
Yeah.
How many of these are just related to capitalism, but because the idea of capitalism is that you'd be, well, that is what you explain, capitalism is the getting lots of utilization from many people below to bring up to the top. Versus the other way around, which would be.
I think capitalism is a kind of hijacking. So what I'm a fan of is markets. I'm a fan of markets because they're the only way to scale transactions across big groups, I think. I don't know an alternative to markets.
But they always lead to a.
But what we don't,
accumulation of wealth,
that's it, right? So the problem is now you have to have,
power accumulates.
well, yeah, so, but that system gets hijacked. And how does it get hijacked? Well, first you have to have some coinage, you streamline this with money, and then you start accumulating money. And it's the accumulation of money that's the problem. It's not money per se, it's not markets per se. It's the accumulation of money. So what you need is an architecture in which that just doesn't happen. And
You spend your money right away.
no, the point is, if you had the correct society, I mean, if you had a bonobo society, there would be no reason to accumulate wealth. You would be, everybody, no one would be dying, no one would be
So
starving.
is that called socialism?
Oh, God, no.
Do you hear questions from Germany? From
No.
online?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just as a lot of this talk is based on something like we are very bad because we all have all of this, but I'm thinking like if we based on very, very concrete statistics, like how many people die from violence, if we even put like World War and all those murder in, like humans across all species are actually very peaceful. Like if you divide by our
Yeah.
population count. So
I'm not compared to bonobos, elephants, and orcas.
But
Compared to chimps, maybe. But the point is, we have a lot of patriarchies out there in the animal kingdom, right? So there's a lot of red in tooth and claw out there. And we're, okay, but just turn on the news. Like, can you even tell where that's from? Right? Look at that. It's a bombed out. Devastating. It could be, there's, half dozen places it could be. Probably you're gonna narrow it down to probably 2 places. Right now, the cute ones right now. But this could be anywhere. We're doing this everywhere. Where's this happening? Like, where's this happening? Where's this happening? It could be like all over, right? So, I think we have potential. But what we're doing right now, everything but bacteria will be dead in a while. So bacteria will survive. And the phage will survive. So the bacteria and the phage will go back.
Smarter than bacteria are.
What?
We're smarter than bacteria.
Yeah, we're well into the break.
Yeah, I'll take, okay.
Oh, okay,
In
so,
10 minutes.
okay, so we should probably break.
We should take a break.
Take a break now for 10 minutes and then come back for Andreas' talk.
We can maybe make a time where we talk about it.
Okay. First time that it's flies, I haven't seen it before. The language, those are fantastic.
They're all made down environments.
Well, I'll tell you, continue to channel her because.
Let's start with something peaceful. There is a story here in 3 parts. Those people who want to go at the end. If you want to hear the last part, especially the electronic stuff, to continue. But I want to start with something peaceful and and whatnot. This is really driving up here today. As I was driving on the Mesa, Hastings Mesa, I saw these beautiful animals crossing the road, and I said, "Wow, this is really pretty cool." You know,
Are they partridge?
no, I think they're no, they are big. They are big. Wild turkeys. Right. Anyway, so let's start the talk, the official talk, share my slides. And so I minimize this. So this is really a more reasonable title, Physics-Based Perception from Bats and Dragonflies to Humans. And we spent a lot of time in this workshop talking about machine learning and AI and whatnot. But if we look at the kind of machines that we want to build, we want machines that interact with the environment. It starts with sensing, where we turn the world to signals, perception, signals to symbols, knowledge, where we actually do learning, and this is the AI machines that many of us are working on this workshop. And then we have reasoning, which is information to action and behaving actions to work, which is really the robotics group and all that. What I will do, first of all, I want to argue that we need model-based systems with compositability so that we can actually synthesize things and we understand what we're doing. And second, I want to argue today that if we can do computing at the first two stages, sensing and perception, then we simplify what our problems a lot, okay? So I'm gonna talk about three topics today. Again, you're welcome to leave for the last one. I think it's about 45 minutes, 50. Sensing and physics-based perception. So the question at hand is, how do sensory systems and neural pathways exploit physics to achieve robust perception and behavior? And the word robust is really the key here. And I'm going to talk about three things: about microdoppler effect, about polarization of light, and about resonator-based sound generator, which is really how we produce speech. Doppler effect. Doppler effect was postulated by Christian Doppler and an Austrian scientist. When you see a swan or a duck moving in a lake, you see the waves in the front of the duck be shorter than the waves around it. That's really a physical manifestation of the Doppler effect. I have a little video here, a simulation of you have a wave propagating. You see the waves from an observer. Essentially, the waves, as they come towards you, they get compressed. And that's why when you're at a train station and the train is coming, you go, whoop, and you hear the change of the sound. Now, having said that, Doppler actually postulated this to predict that the light emitted by these binary stars, but his theory was all wrong. So that postulation was wrong. And then he also predicted in the same vein that humans would not be able to see any star moving above 150, 136 thousand miles per second. And I gave some theory that was so wrong, but yet the Doppler effect is what we have today, and it has been seen. And so, what is the acoustic Doppler effect? Much like light, if you actually have someone moving or an object moving towards you, and you send a sound, the sound reflected from that object is going to be shifted by some frequency to the path. Okay. Now, if the person is moving like this, different part of your bodies move at different velocity, and that's what I would call the microdoppler effect. And so, unbeknownst to us, that nature discovered the microdoppler effect 500,000 years ago or something. We actually demonstrate this, and the idea is the following: you have a sound, it reflects from someone walking, and you can see. I know I'm going to do I need to show on my screen. You can see actually the 40 kilohertz of the sound. As you move, because your body moves fast and slow, there's a scalloping of the body, which is the main line here. This is your legs, and this is your arms. So you can actually see arms and legs and the structure of your body. Now, turns out, one of the buds, and that's a horseshoe bud, and I'm going to make oops, go back. I'm going to play the sound. What's different about this bud, it doesn't vocalize with chirps, it's continued sound. And that's the only bud that uses continuous sounds to vocalize. Why? Well, why? Because this bud, it's a lazy bud. It doesn't like to forage open up. You can go to the lake and you can see the bud foraging there. This bud likes to just sit on the branch and looks around. And if it sees something that is worth catching, goes and gets it. So the echolocating greater horseshoe bud could classify insects and knows this is original paper by 1990. What's more interesting is this example here. But you can classify something, but is it worthly to go and get it? Because you're going to spend energy. So these guys did an amazing experiment where they did psychophysics on a bat. They put, the idea is that a bigger moth and a smaller moth, from the microdoppler effect, you can tell whether it's a big or a small moth. And from this physics, you can decide whether you can go and get it. And basically, what they show in this experiment is that indeed the bat will go and get the big moth and not go and get the small moth. So that is really amazing that actually the bat knows physics, or the brain of the bat knows the physics, how to decode the physics to do that. Anyway, this bat also has a unique characteristic. It has an acoustic phobia, which this is the frequency response of the cochlea, and around 82 kilohertz, you have a lot of filters, because you want to measure the microdoppler. You want to measure this fine structure of the Doppler effect that lets you know whether you have a big moth or a small moth. So that's the story. I mean, we went on and we built a foliated cochlea, and we had the moth, and we actually measured the response using spectrograms and using the cochlea. And as you can see in the two plots there, they match each other. And then we went on and used this approach to recognize different animals as they walk.
But how can you make a cochlea foliated?
Yes.
By beamforming? Or?
No, by having
I see, very high resolution one spot.
One spot.
It's like you just have frequency. You have more receptors and
Yes.
frequency.
Exactly. Which is really fascinating. So it makes the whole story make sense now. We understand it a bit more. So we went on and it could represent dogs and different kind of dogs and horses. And so
what, from the heartbeat or what?
No, from the sound.
Oh, I see.
This is the microdoppler effect. As the dog walks,
Oh, I see.
it has a signature. So as they move, you can actually tell what it is. You can actually tell humans too. I mean, we did an experiment with 8 people in the lab, and you could recognize 99% from the way they walk. Okay. I will stop here. There is more. If you want, come and talk to me, but I just want to complete the story. Polarization of light. Again, go to the little pond, and you're gonna see all these dragonflies. Flies. By the way, there's a great book. I never would give a book as a reference, but if you're gonna buy a book, buy this book. It's amazing. Really fantastic book. So why would the world care about polarization? Well, if you're a bee, I mean, the octabee, horseshoe crabs, for navigation and water finding, If you are, if you want to do artificial vision, you can tell whether the material is dielectric or metal. 3D surface reconstruction for free. You don't need to do deep neural networks. You can actually build this for free. Real-time polarimetry. You can do Raman scattering. There's a lot of things that actually rely on polarization. Now, what is polarization? Here is a generalized description of light. You have lights, the H field and the E field. If it's linear polarized, the light always vibrates in one dimension. And theta is the polarization angle. If it's elliptically polarized, it will actually rotate as it goes, the field. And if it's random, it will be random polarized. Now, how does it look in the world? Well, unfortunately, we cannot see polarized light. A few of us have about 10% of the shortwave cones that they are sensitive. So some people actually can see polarized light. But we can describe, but the animal and the world is polarized. For example, what you see there is a false color scheme rendering where the octopus has different colors. They're not really different colors. They are different polarization vectors in that space, the star. But the best example that you can actually know it yourself is leaves. In the spring, when the leaves spring out, you see them very bright and very interesting. And you can tell there's something funny about those leaves because the light emitted by those leaves is highly polarized. So what you see here is a leaf. In the crease, polarization is angle is color, and so you have green and purple, and so you can see if we look at the space, they are polarized at about 90 degrees or 180 degrees, different angles, and you can tell from the space. And when the light is not polarized, which is at the crease, it's basically white. So white means not polarized. Okay, so how can you get polarized light? You can have a Hertzian polarized electric field comes when it impinges to these metal wires. The vector component of the electric field gets absorbed by the wires, and everything that goes through is the perpendicular. Also, you can take a plate, and then you can push the beam through the plate, and then you can get the ordinary beam and the extraordinary beam, which is at 290 90 degrees. And so you can actually get two ways. Now, this is a beautiful picture of an arthropod mantis shrimp from Cronin's lab at UMD, our neighborhood. Turns out shrimp have vision on materia that not only detect multispectral, about 13 wavelengths, but also polarized light. So what you see in the middle, there's a cross. For example, here, these are the photoreceptors that actually detect polarized light, and they can rotate and they can move, which is really amazing. So 2012, Hardy basically studied current biology, studied the structure of polarization vision in Drosophila, and you can see essentially what you have in an armadillo. You have 7 rhabdosomes, and each one of these photodetectors, so to speak, that make this compound structure detects the light with different direction polarization. So this is really, what you see here is is sensitive to different polarization, which is really amazing. The structural complexity of this device is really amazing. Anyway, a while back, we thought it would be nice to build a polarized camera. This happened at Caltech when I was at Caltech. We built the first one-dimensional polarization camera. We took 2 one-dimensional with polarized film, And this is it. This is really era 1995, 6. How do we do it? We use polarizing film. Polarizing film basically is polymers that is doped with iodine, and the iodine is conductive. So you actually, and the distance between the polymers is a few nanometers. It doesn't matter whether they are random, it still works very well. So that's what we did. We did lithography of the polymers now, and we created a pattern, which is really a checkerboard bar pattern. And then we can take that, put it on a CMOS imager. Now 2D, we can make a 2D imager. And then we made basically what it is, essentially the first polarization camera. This circuit here, for those circuit folks, is a bipolar version of a current normalizer, basically computing I1 plus I2, I1 minus I2 divided by I1 plus I2, and that's essentially polarization contrast. That's how we compute contrast for every pixel. So we did that. We did some experiments, and you can see this is an imager from a camera, a compact camera. This is really a small camera. Again, this is really the first polarization camera built, where you can tell this object here, this is non-polarized specular reflection, and this is polarized specular reflection. Tells you concavity, whether your surface is concave or convex. Amazing. You can tell physics by just without any computation now. You know, computer scientists die to do this all the time. And if you have this machine, anyway, we went also to build the birefringent-based crystal, where we took a different thickness, we put it on top, the right thickness, and the ordinary extraordinary beam went to the side. And so then we wrote this review paper that actually made it the pictures in the front page of journal, Census Journals and IEEE Journal. And so it described basically all the work there. Now,
Is that Zavin?
yeah,
Zavin, yeah.
yeah. So he was in contact with me, 96. So 15 years later, of course, Sony went on and produced a real camera, which actually is an interesting lesson. It takes about 10 to 15 years to make a real product out of a lab prototype.
I mean, it's not working on, you just buy it, actually.
You can buy it, yeah. It's not,
$10,000 or something, right?
really?
It's pretty expensive, yeah.
Oh!
It's very low volume.
And then, yeah, and then copy making,
Did you count it?
no.
I mean, it's not very strong patent anyway, it's expired by now.
Like it would have expired, it's like 96.
But anyway, you guys should all know, how many people know Victor Grua?
Yeah,
Victor Grua in St. Louis. You guys don't know Victor Grua, he was a wonderful participant for many years
Yes.
there in Telluride. I remember late night soldering stuff. Pick Michael's, he has gone on and done it.
Right.
A bunch of cool
between 2002, which we published a paper, until 2015, he went on to do a lot of applications. I think that's really,
I'll put a video
Yeah.
of the P. Davis camera that we built with him.
yeah.
You know,
I think you need the micro lenses also. The micro lenses was also important development.
Yeah, the micros, but well, there's an interesting story.
More important development, micro lenses.
Yeah, all important, but
Yeah.
I mean, micro lenses existed before this.
Before.
Any camera.
Have millions of them in their pocket right now.
Right, exactly. That's what you have. Anyway, let's now, for the remainder, or maybe I'll finish this with a quick, I try to. This is really something very, very close related to you as you hear me now. So, resonance physics and melt scale. Vocal tract model. So, you know, as we produce speech, is your speech production is done through your vocal tract, which is basically a resonator tube that actually can be made to have different lengths. And the length of the resonator and the shape of the resonator, as shown here, correspond to U, O, A, E, E. Okay? This is really Wakita 1977, and these are the resonances of the vocal tract. Different people have different vocal tracts. Usually, women have shorter vocal tracts than men. So this is not hearsay. This is real data, and so we can actually see Good. That is from Maureen Stone's X-ray recording of vocalization, how your vocal tract works. Maureen used to be at Hopkins. That's how your vocal tract moves to produce ooh.
And where's your vocal track in that video?
Or is the empty space
It's between the checkerboard.
between the checkerboard?
You see, the mouth,
Let
the
me-
lips are on the right.
Reason. Okay.
So, do you know the history here? When this was first done with X-rays, they didn't know that they were gonna get, cancer, it was gonna make
Exactly.
cancer, because they had the same person there going through hours and hours and
Exactly.
hours.
Exactly. And I know this is the non-intended, the bad things that happen when you don't know the dangers of doing this. But it's, I know. Yeah, they have other methods of doing it afterwards. So, what does it mean? Well, if you look at the 4 months, which is the resonance of the vocal tract, in this case, 33 men, 28 women is known as the Peterson-Barney data set, and 15 children. We're basically saying heat, head, hot, hot. Essentially, what you see is that there is a center frequency for the 4 month space F1, F2. Those are really F1, F2. And the center frequencies, and they spread, and males and females are very distinct. Now, if I want to communicate with my fellow human species, and we all have different vocal tracts, how do we make my 4 months align in the same frequency as anybody else's 4 months? Well, today, that problem is solved. We don't care about this. We put a big deep neural network and that solves the problem. Now, but is that really how we do it? And what's the process? Well, turns out, and I'll take a little bit of example here. When you do speech recognition today and before the deep neural, we still use that. This is the MFCC. Everybody that does speech recognition uses MFCC, stands for Mel scale, Mel frequency, Kepler coefficients. You start with 256 numbers, you throw half of them, the 128 the real. You put in the Mel scale mapping, and that compresses the numbers to about 24 numbers. You take the log in the amplitude, then you do the discrete cosine transform, and at the end, you add the energy, you get 13 numbers, you get the derivatives of the numbers and the derivatives of the derivatives, and you get about 39 numbers, and that's how you do speech recognition, and that's MFCC. So what's the Mel scale do? Well, Mel scale was actually original paper by Volkmann and Steven. Is basically a scale for the measurement of pitch. How are humans able to distinguish pitch? And what's the resolution? And what they discovered, basically, this is the resolution. Now, normally we plot it in a log linear scale. Linear X, Y is the male, log is the X is the frequency, and the formula that we use is 1127 log 1 plus F divided by 700. The question to ask is why? Why that magic number? And does it make sense to have one Mel scale for everything? Well, this is the Mel scale, and basically, what I said earlier, if you take the Patterson and binary data and you push them through the Mel scale, you get.
One with the mouse.
Yeah. If you take the original data, which look like this, F1, F2, the green and the red, male and female, not overlapping, and you put them through this transformation, you make them actually overlap. So they're kind of normalized in the frequency F1, F2 space. So everybody in a speech machine, recognition machine, will sound acoustically the same.
What are F1 and F2 again?
Formants, resonance of the vocal tract. It's all about the resonance of the vocal tract. That's why I started with the vocal tract. So we said, can we learn the Mel scale? And this is the really surprising result. We haven't published this. One of these days we're going to publish it. 20 years later. We basically, let's learn the Mel scale. So we had the Michigan database. We took 45 males, 48 females, 12 vowels, hard, heat, hot, the same data set. We said, well, what does MER scale does? We start with 128 channels. We group them 10 first, 10 second, to make all possible combinations, 1 million of them, not all possible, all MER scales defined by that. This is one MER scale, and this is MER scale 845,000. We ran these experiments for about 3 weeks, classify data, and we basically found out that the performance, I mean, these are really all the MER scales, and the good ones are the ones which are the black, typical ones. What are the best ones? Well, the top 32 look like this. And so the top frequency and channel, and the black is really the formula that I showed there. So that is really interesting. But if we go and analyze the data, male and female top 32, which I don't have here, I don't have the next plots. I took them out. Basically, these guys here correspond to male, and these guys here, which are more linear, correspond to male to female. So basically, the MER scale, as we use it today, is tuned for males, but not for all. And for females, the optimal MER scale is actually more linear. So, and why this? Stevens and Wilkerson used 6 subjects, and I couldn't find from the paper, but I suspect they're all males.
But they could redo it today.
I know, and I haven't been redone.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so this is really an interesting story where you actually don't take anything for granted. So the next, I have a few more minutes. The next question is, well, we have male, female, but can we do better than that? And the answer is yes. And one of the experiments that we did a few years ago, I had the slides, let me unhide the slides. I take the spectrum without doing any, can I take the spectrum and given the speaker, can I apply transformation to the spectrum to tune the spectrum, the features to the speaker's vocal tract? And so
To make them look more the same or something. Is that what you-
no, to match the model that I have to the speaker, individual speaker, not to the class, even better than the class, 2 classes, males and females. And what do we show that we can just do a very simple bilinear transformation, expanding or contracting the spectrum, and a very simple classifier in about half a second of speech to actually tune the acoustic front end to the individual speaker. We think that actually is happening in the cochlea using the outer hair cells, tuning the cochlea for individual signal speakers. And so, but it hasn't been done. So anyway, this is the performance at that time. We show that we kind of
What are the axes here?
is speaker count training set. The performance is the next one. Basically, we got this is on the switchboard data set at that time. This is when we normalize, we go from 50, roughly 2% accuracy improvement in word rate recognition. This is large vocabulary. At that time, 2% improvement. It was, I mean, this is really 10,000 words. And so this was one of this is called normal track normalization, vocal track normalization in the 1995 to 2005 was one of the 10 most significant advances in speech recognition.
So, well, it'd be quite interesting now if you take, one of these RNNs that does speech recognition and look in whether you can decode this characteristic because it must be using it already.
It must be, that's what I said.
To decode somehow the
Exactly.
the sense for her.
Yes, I think that's really interesting. Also, someone goes into psychophysics to actually see whether this actually has it. Yeah.
You mentioned something about the cochlea having some sensitivity here. What was that about?
Well, the cochlea is Chichi talk about this essentially logarithmic scale.
Right. Yeah.
But also it has hair cell. So and you could envision tightening or the stiffness of the membrane through the hair, so in some area to really tune
You
it.
got feedback to the.
Feedback to, yeah,
Not
feedback,
just, not just this nice automatic gate control.
No, other hairs,
Also,
yes.
frequency.
Frequency, yes, this is a hypothesis.
Switching.
Yeah, Shichi.
I think probably it's the gain more than the frequency. Now, I was just saying there's actually a couple of papers where they learn the front end through some deep network stuff.
Yeah,
They found the mouse skill also.
it must be there for, but again, you're learning from males and females and everybody, and I think
You're saying the optimal accuracy is obtained when you
When
learn.
the
the
filters
front-
are allowed to
front end.
learn and then they learn on the mouse skill.
Yeah.
You get a mouse skill also.
Yeah, but again, what am I doing here? Beyond the learning, I think we need adaptation.
Yeah.
Real-time adaptation, and we do it. We humans do it.
Yeah, but the biggest thing by far is the automatic gain control because of the huge volume range.
Yeah, no, I know, but that is, yes, the game control that actually, yes, of course, that's it. Anyway, that's it. The people that contributed are a bunch of people in this group, and our team on the left, and then other team pictures.
Can you make it full screen?
Is that
Yeah.
yellow, right?
Yeah, that was. There you go. So we had a wafer, and this is the group.
Original picture, yeah.
Yeah, original picture, and this is one picture with a stone in the middle, another picture with the wafer, and another here, which is really hilarious. Actually, what generative AI would do. Anyway, thank you.